You build a Power Query solution and it works. Then the structure of the source file changed and it breaks. Now you get the call to go back and fix it. But what if that maintenance didn't have to be yours? In this video, we'll use a mapping table on an Excel worksheet to control column names and column data types. So an end user never has to go to the Power Query editor. All they do is update a table on a worksheet, refresh the query, and done. This solution will feature List.Zip, a function that can't be accessed from the user interface. There's a separate video on this channel explaining how that works, so if you're unfamiliar with it, I recommend watching that first. I'll link to it here and in the description. But before we build anything, let's take a look at the two tables that we're starting out with. First, our raw data. This is the sample data that we want to transform. And here are the worksheet inputs. This is a mapping table. It has 3 columns: the original column name, the new column name, and the column data type. That type column uses validation dropdowns to help keep the inputs consistent. This is the table a non-Power Query user can maintain. They don't need to know anything about Power Query or the M language. They only need to understand what this table controls and how to update it if needed. So let's start building. I'll go back to our data, right-click somewhere within our table, and select Get Data from Table or Range to bring that into the Power Query editor. When working inside Power Query, it's best practice to have both the formula bar and the query settings pane visible at all times. If that's not the case, just head over to the View tab and you can toggle them on right here. So take a look at the formula bar. This code was generated to bring in our data. The function Excel.currentWorkbook was used, and then a row selector is applied to identify the specific table, in this case by its name. This pattern is something that we can reuse to bring in our worksheet inputs. That's a table too. All we have to do is update the name within that row selector. But first, we need a way to translate textual type descriptions, such as date or integer, into an actual type value, something Power Query can use. For that task, I've prepared a record. Let's take a look. I've placed that record above the source tab. It's a simple way to organize things within my query. This record connects a text, the field name, to a type, the field value. On line 5, the field name date has the corresponding date data type assigned to its field value. Notice that most field names here are actually keywords in the M language, but they don't require that hash notation. That's because field names are generalized identifiers and have more relaxed naming rules. So things like a field name that starts with a digit, contains a space or even a keyword, that's no issue at all, which makes reading and writing this syntax so much easier. Let's bring in our mapping table, and I'll copy the source tab. And I'll call that worksheet inputs. I'll place a comma at the end, and all we have to do is update that row selector to reflect that same table. Here, instead of raw data, worksheet inputs. We've already seen this table, so let's continue with the setup. This mapping table relies on manual user input. Therefore, we can't assume that all rows are valid. Only matching column names between our source, our sample data, and something that's listed in the old column name column of our mapping table, that should be considered. So let's get all of the column names from our raw data. The table column names function returns a list, and we can use it to keep only those rows from worksheet inputs that have a matching value. So here we go. We're using Table.SelectRows to iterate our worksheet inputs and only retain those rows where the old column name value has a match within the column names list from our source table. That means any row that fails this condition is automatically filtered out. This protects the query, but it doesn't tell the end user if a row is skipped, making that an iterative process. So if an end user discovers a new name wasn't applied, he has to go back to the mapping table, fix the old column name, and refresh the query again. In a more complete setup, you could create a separate query that reports back any rows that were skipped by inverting this filter condition. Simply insert the keyword not between each and list.contains. We won't build that here, just know that you can. Alright, all of our prep is done. We can rename columns. Now, the Table.RenameColumns function expects a list of rename operations lists, where every rename operation itself is a 2-item list. An old name followed by a new name. And we can use List.Zip to create all of those value pairs. To review the outcome of this expression, we have to return its variable after the in clause. That looks good. Alright, the final step is to set column data types. The Table.TransformColumnTypes function also expects a list of lists, a pairing of a column name followed by a type. You've probably guessed it, we'll be using List.Zip again, this time in combination with the List.Transform function. Let's head back to the advanced editor. Enter a comma there, go to a new line, let's call this transform. And now we need to transform the values that are in the column type column using List.Transform. Again, the column type column only contains text strings that need to be converted into an actual type. That's why we're using List.Transform. To iterate that list, and for each item, Record.FieldOrDefault will look for a field with a matching name within our column type's record. If it finds a match, that field's value is returned. If no match exists, it returns the default value, in this case, type any. So to review this result, we have to return the transform variable after the in clause. Well, there you go. The key takeaway is this: you can manage certain aspects of your query from outside the Power Query editor. If you run into issues implementing this, such as a formula firewall error, check out the GitHub resources on this video. It includes a section on how to adapt it for your work that covers common issues and how to resolve them. If you learned something or found this useful, a thumbs up, a comment, and subscribing is a great way to support the channel. I appreciate that a lot. Thanks so much for watching. Till next time.